Middle school-aged me found all the popular Pokemon ships so boring that I wrote a ship fic of 2 of Ash's Pokemon. Okay, do I have your attention? Cause this isn't an April Fool's video. This is a birthday video. Fanfiction. The good, the bad, and unmentionable stuff that can't be shown in a video like this. I'm sure by this point the term fanfiction needs no introduction. For a lot of creatives, making a creative work based off an existing property is how they first got their foot into art, animation, voice acting, and in my case, writing. See, when I was a kid, one of my pastimes me and my siblings would partake in was coming up with stories based on our favorite shows, these usually being based on whatever our hyperfixations were at the time. We've done this with various series like Total Drama and Hamtaro, but the big reoccurring one was Pokemon. However, we did this in a sort of non-traditional way. Instead of writing out said stories, we just act them out. It was funnier and allowed us to practice our acting chops. And while we did write out a few of them, there's only one fic that managed to make it in full to the internet. And this was a fic written by a then 13-year-old chico known as the Secret Admirer. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty of the story, I should preface a few things. Because at this time I was a prepubescent middle school boy, a lot of our stories were romance. When you're discovering that some people are pretty and dating people sounds nice, your creative works may reflect that, even if it involves shipping literal Pokemon. Yes, the Pokemon anime is full of many popular ships, mostly centered around Ash with whichever girl he's traveling with each generation, but personally, I was never too into a lot of them. Yeah, my sister was a hardcore Poke shipper, Ash X Misty for those who don't know, but I was always all, yeah, it's okay. My fascination was focused on the various Pokemon Ash caught. Yeah, I didn't have a lot of friends in school. I'm not exactly sure what drew me into wanting to write stories about them, but if I were to guess, it will be that they felt more like blank slates. Sure, a lot of them do show hints of personality at points, but it's usually something basic like, this one's energetic and dances. This one is stubborn and affectionate with Ash. This one should stay away from Bulbasaur. You can't touch this. Them being unable to talk also gave me an extra canvas on how they should sound if they were able to. One of our longest running fics that never got published was a slice of life series on the various happenings with Ash's Pokemon that are boxed at Professor Oak's lab. Now, because we acted these out instead of wrote them, we'd all give them voices that would just not fit, even if the characters had established voices. For example, see Oak here? Well, replace his voice with Dr. Doofenshmirtz.
Fine, I'll be quiet. I can shut up. I don't have to talk all the time.
You can tell this was during the random equals funny era of the internet. This series is going to be important for context because the personalities of the Pokemon we sculpted from that are how they're portrayed in the story. Now remember, this is the only story I ever published, so any average reader is not going to have any context for any of these character portrayals. I don't know how I even got positive comments for this. This story primarily focuses on Ash's Bayleaf, who is a Chikorita in the story, and Ash's Quilava, who is a Cyndaquil. The setting of the story is supposed to be sometime during Johto League Champions, that's why. Now for this story, Chikorita is still affectionate with Ash, but in a more over-the-top, cartoony, obsessive female crush kind of way. You could tell my only frame of reference for romance I had at that age was that sort of character archetype you'd see in a lot of cartoons at the time, because that's her if you subtract the stalking. We also expanded this to having every Chikorita in the world liking Ash as if he leads some sort of leaf dino cult. I was truly trying to portray my favorite Pokemon in the most unique way. Cyndaquil, meanwhile, we were a bit more, creative with. It didn't really have as strong of a personality in the show. The only things I can recall are being kinda shy and having an arc where it struggled to light its back flame, so we sort of did whatever. A lot of our portrayals involved it being a wimp, being allergic to everything under the sun, and being just kind of a loser. This is funny when you remember that Cyndaquil in the actual show was one of Ash's stronger Johtomons. I don't know if I was just salty it was more popular than Chikorita, or if I was just ripping off the common cartoon nerd archetype at the time, but yeah, this is Cyndaquil. I call it that now because its other main trait was having a one-sided crush on Chikorita. Also, so this doesn't get confusing later on, in this story we portrayed Cyndaquil as male. I don't think its gender was ever confirmed in the show, but correct me if I'm wrong on that. Now that we got that out of the way, let's delve into the cringe. So I'm not gonna narrate the whole story. This is 2 chapters long and I don't feel like wrecking my voice, so what I'll do for a compromise is give an abridged version of the plot with key excerpts from the story voiced by my friends. The story is no longer up, but I do have all the contents of it completely unaltered on a Google Doc that I will be linking in the description if you want to read it yourself. This is my first fanfic. I don't own Pokemon because if I did, I would totally air this fic. This was just what people did on fanfiction.net back in the day. This kind of disclaimer should be obvious, and I highly doubt any of the corporations that own these properties are going to be looking on the back corners of the internet to find fanfiction to send a cease and desist order to, especially if the author isn't profiting off of it and doesn't go past a written work. Then again, you never know with those Nintendo ninjas. Our story opens on Valentine's Day. Ash and Co are in Johto and decide to take a break. Brock has 10,000 cards set to be delivered to every Joy and Jenny. Jeez, go big or go home, I guess. Also, Misty has a mushy card for Ash, which, I get it. Misty did low-key have a crush on Ash back then, but it was in a tsundere way. It'd be out of character for her to just give Ash a mushy card in public like this.
Hey, I've got an idea. I'll send out my Pokemon to celebrate Valentine's Day and hang out.
Apparently, Valentine's Day is such a huge deal that even Pokemon want to celebrate it. I mean, they did celebrate Christmas. Actually, what would Valentine's Day be like in the Pokemon world? Are Love Disc involved? But yes, Ash sends out his Johto team and they go Valentining. And yes, I mean it. They all apparently had the time to make their own cards. I'm sure they all snuck out of their balls to the nearest Poke Walmart or something. Totodile, how did you get so many Valentines? Pikachu asks, looking at the big stack of cards.
I so handsome, had so much love. All the Pokemon we met little girls sent me mushy cards.
Totodile answered, feeling a little bit honored. So this is another example of characterization that only makes sense if you're me or my siblings. We made Ash's Totodile, who in the show is an energetic type who has a cute little dance, an arrogant ladies man. Think Justin from Total Drama, or I guess to relate this to Pokemon, Gary Oak in the first season, or Brock plus arrogance. I can actually point to the inspiration here. In the episode Love Totodile Style, Totodile falls in love with a circus performer Azumarill and spends the whole episode trying to impress her, only to be rejected in favor of a Golduck. Now this is a plot type that has been reused several times throughout the show, but where the real inspiration came from is towards the end, where Totodile immediately falls in love with a random Quagsire, most likely repeating the cycle. 13-year-old me took this as, oh, he's Brock in Pokemon form, and made that his whole character. I also threw in the dancing as a form of method he'd used to up his riz. So basically, a one-off joke from one episode became his whole character. And this, my friends, is what we call Flanderization. Meanwhile, Chikorita is all sad emoji about not getting a Valentine. I love how, especially Ash, is just written there in parentheses. Subtlety in writing does not exist when you're in middle school. But wait, Chikorita got a mysterious letter.
Dear Chikorita, I love you. Whenever I see you battling, my heart starts battling for you. I always have fun training with you. Do you know a chat? Because totally working on me. I'm just writing to say that I love you and would totally want to marry you. Imagine what our kids would look like. They look weird, but who needs kids anyway? As long as the love will last. Love, your secret admirer.
And apparently Chikorita just assumes Ash wrote it, probably due to the what our kids would look like line. She really wanted to prove that one Pokemon marriage line from Diamond and Pearl true. So Chikorita starts writing a letter back.
Don't worry. If you can't write, a footprint's legally binding.
Ignore that moment, please, and Cyndaquil approaches.
What are you doing?
Cyndaquil asked.
Writing a love letter to Ash.
She replied.
You do realize that you being a Pokemon, it'll never work out.
Who says?
The laws of nature.
I imagine this is how most of Ash's team sees her crush on Ash, just passively brushing it off.
Phooey.
Chikorita said to herself. She then added to Cyndaquil.
We'll be like Romeo and Juliet, a pair of star-crossed lovers who live happily ever after.
Cyndaquil was thinking of what she said and then realized something. He remarked,
Wait, didn't Romeo and Juliet die at the end?
She then got angry and started scribbling furiously until she yelled,
What's it to ya?
I do love how even as a kid, I could tell that Romeo and Juliet was not a good romantic tale to relate to or compare your relationship to. I grew up around literature nerds, okay? So Chikorita writes, with her vines I assume, the cheesiest, sappiest love letter that a fresh new teenager could think of.
My dearest Ash, I love you. Our love can be so much stronger than anyone, especially Misty. If you choose another, like Misty, I will live a sad, cold, lonely life. I thank you for the letter you wrote, and now this is the perfect chance to confess our love and live happily ever after. Love, your dearest Chikorita.
I just really wanted to hammer home that Chikorita hated Misty's guts, didn't I? It's extra funny because the only other character Chikorita was jealous of in the show was Pikachu. There's even a whole episode about it, and it's not even for romantic reasons, it's because Pikachu just gets more attention due to being Ash's ace and more experienced. Heck, one may argue that Chikorita's affection with Ash is more of an affectionate puppy love kind of thing, except for this line.
Ash, I think maybe Chikorita's crush has gotten out of hand.
Then again, it is Brock saying that, so Chikorita immediately takes the letter over to Ash with confidence and he gives it a read. Chikorita yelled, "Chica!" which made Ash notice her and the piece of paper she was holding.
I wonder what this is.
Ash thought as he grabbed the piece of paper from her vines. He read the letter out loud.
Chikorita, Chikorita.
Ash looked at her and said,
Wow, Chikorita, your handwriting is really impressive for someone with no fingers.
Okay, I'll admit, this joke still makes me chuckle to this day. Something about the fact that she wrote the most shoujo rom-com ass letter possible, gave it to Ash with such confidence, only for the punchline to be that Pokemon can only actually write their own names is just perfect. Now, if I wanted to be true to the show, I'd just make the letter be a bunch of footprints or paw prints, but honestly, that wouldn't be as funny. Like, if I was gonna compare this joke to something newer I watched, it feels like something Becky from Spy Family would try to write to Lloyd, only for the handwriting to be completely illegible to him due to her being 6. But then Ash remarks that he didn't give any of his Pokemon Valentines, to which Chikorita stopped and couldn't believe what she just heard. How the fuck did I misspell stopped? I was starting 8th grade when I wrote this. Then she asks around and apparently this takes an hour. I guess she spent most of it trying to get a logical sentence out of Misty's Psyduck, and then Cyndaquil approaches. Then Cyndaquil came over, sat next to her, and asked,
Why so sad?
Chikorita replied,
Someone sent me a letter, and it wasn't Ash, and I have no idea who it is.
Still crying, Cyndaquil sighed and thought for a second and said,
I have a confession to make. I sent you that letter.
What?
What a cliffhanger. Really leaving the viewers hanging. Seriously, Cyndaquil was the only one of the Pokemon she had a full conversation with in the first chapter. Who else would it be? Crocodile over there? And now on to chapter 2, where the story takes an interesting turn. Chikorita kept looking at Cyndaquil with her jaw dropped to the ground.
You mean you wrote me that letter?
Chikorita asked.
Yes, I did.
Said Cyndaquil.
That's exactly what I said last chapter.
This is totally peak meta humor that isn't forced at all. But yes, Cyndaquil wrote the letter because he's been secretly in love with her. You'd think this would go off its portrayal in the anime with it being on the shy side, but that's gonna quickly erode this chapter. I also seem self-aware that they haven't actually interacted much, as I do seem to make a reference to the one scene where they did interact. So Cyndaquil asks her out and, well, gets rejected.
I know. Now that you know, will you go out with me?
Chikorita thought for a second. She had never talked to Cyndaquil much, except for when she was alone with him in a cave looking for Totodile and a beach ball. She said,
No.
I'm not.
asked Cyndaquil in a compelling tone. Seriously, asked.
Because I am in love with Ash, and there is no guy I like or ever will like better than Ash.
Chikorita then slapped Cyndaquil with her vine and walked away, disappointed about who wrote her the letter. Jeez, what a tonal shift. Cyndaquil just had an out-of-nowhere character turn from shy and nervous to desperate simp. This is common nice guy behavior in the real world, but it's handled super weird here. I'll give Past Me credit, it kinda balances out as both of them have this unrealistic, unrequited love. Chikorita's actually being more ludicrous with her crush on a human. Also, complaining tone? What? And now the rest of the fic is Cyndaquil's many failed attempts to woo Chikorita. It's like Pepe Le Pew, without any of the Looney Tunes charm. The first attempt is Cyndaquil trying to impress her with a ring of fire, complete with jumping through the ring. Basically a contest move.
How do you like that?
Asked Cyndaquil, who was sure that it worked, but instead of an applause or hug, he got a scared grass type.
Ah! Fire!
Yelled Chikorita as she backed up.
Cyndaquil, you know I'm scared of fire!
She then slapped him with her vine harder than the last time. She walked away, even more angry, but Cyndaquil knew to never give up. You know, it'd probably be funnier if she was just unimpressed by the whole thing, because I'm pretty sure a ton of fire types can do that. Also, Cyndaquil, just take that L and move on already. The next attempt is Cyndaquil faking being sick to, I guess, have Chikorita romantically nurse him back to health? How many anime DVDs are you storing in that Pokeball? Cyndaquil then thought,
If I pretend to be sick, Chikorita will have to take care of me and she'll fall in love with me from saying what a great nurse she is.
how the hell does that make any sense? She'll brag about what a great nurse she is so much that she'll fall in love with you? And I thought Discord Sims made leaps in logic to justify their delusions. So it tries this, and all it does is get Chikorita to take him to Ash, who says this.
Oh no, Cyndaquil's sick. We'd better take him to the Pokemon Center where Nurse Joy will give him a shot with a sharp needle.
Ash said as he went to grab him. Wow, Ash, what a unique way to word that. Not, we better take him to a Pokemon Center, or we better take him to Nurse Joy. You gotta specifically reference the shot he'll get and how sharp the needle is. I don't consider myself the best at writing dialogue nowadays, but I can at least say I've improved. Then there's a montage of Cyndaquil's other failed attempts, including flowers, cheesy pickup lines, and trying to be brave. Whatever that means. Maybe he got a brave face from Piglet's big game. All leading to one final hurrah. Now, because Chikorita's mindset is Ash, 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 Cyndaquil uses that to lure her in. He went to Chikorita, who was about to go and give her flowers to Ash, and said,
I just saw Ash looking for you over there.
This leads him to a hot air balloon he somehow got. Wonder if he robbed Team Rocket. As they went in and took off, she said,
You got me a hot air balloon ride. Wasn't it expensive?
That's fair price.
Cyndaquil answered. Bruh, was some hot air balloon salesman really so desperate for a sale that they sold it to a Pokemon? Come to think of it, how did Cyndaquil pay for it? I honestly prefer the rob Team Rocket theory. Then Chikorita starts to actually consider it for a second.
For a desperate guy, he's kind of cool, I think. Real sweet.
She then realized what she was thinking and yelled,
Wait, I am desperately in love with Ash.
She turned to Cyndaquil and slapped him so hard that he fell out of the basket and landed into a shallow lake.
Ah! It's searing!
Cyndaquil yelled as he was flailing and getting out of the lake. Gotta love the simp repellent vines Chikorita uses. And how did I misspell desperately? Also, it's searing was a reoccurring joke within our fanfics, mostly on Cyndaquil whenever he was sprayed in water or pushed into water. Yeah, he was kind of the butt monkey in a lot of these stories, but don't fret, cause these two eventually get together, when they're both evolved and at Oak's lab. As for them as a couple, let's just say that I wrote couples just as well as I wrote simps. Just mushy, flirty, kissy junk. When Chikorita got down from the balloon, she said,
Look, I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me.
You'll like me someday.
Cyndaquil said as he dried himself off.
Yeah, right.
Chikorita picked up her flowers to Ash and went to look for him, leaving a slightly soggy Cyndaquil behind, still hopeful as ever even after all that happened. You know, past me, if you want them to be portrayed as a slow burn couple, try to develop Cyndaquil eventually to not be such a Sympaquil. That Pokemon cannot use Attract effectively. Or at all. This story, mixed with the leak about Typhlosion a few months ago, might just be the reason why Cyndaquil was not with the Johto starters in Legends ZA. Chikorita squealed and got him kicked out. That simping bastard was not allowed in the Pokemon City of Love. And that was The Secret Admirer. You want to see a shoddily written sim story by a 13-year-old who at the time had never dated anyone? Well, we got you covered. It's almost refreshing to read in the sense that I've come so far as a writer since then. Looking back at your old works can actually improve your confidence as a creator. It gives you a time capsule on what your work used to be like and gives you a strive to get even better. If you're cringing at your old works, chances are you're improving. See you next time.